to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and you're about to listen to a relationship hypnosis session about ending a relationship. Now, most therapists, most coaches would focus very much on improving and mending a relationship, and I would agree with that. If you're in a relationship and it's not quite living up to your standards, your needs aren't being met, it's a much better use of time and resources to try and improve the relationship so that you keep the relationship, but you have a good relationship. But if you can't do that and it may not be viable, communication may have broken down, then it does make sense to end that relationship. But there's two key things that can get in the way of ending a relationship. One is the sunk cost fallacy, that if you've been in a relationship for a number of years, then it feels like, well, because you're familiar with it, it would be a shame to walk away from something that you've put so much time, energy, and emotion in. And that can make sense if you can improve the relationship. But if you can't, then it's almost like a gambler chasing their losses to try and get more money just to pay back what they've already lost. So that sunk cost fallacy is very dangerous in long relationships. And the best question to ask if you are in danger of a sunk cost fallacy is, if I wasn't already in this relationship and I had just joined the relationship in its current form, would I want this relationship? Would I enjoy this relationship? Would I find this relationship valuable? And if the answer is no, then it tells you that it is below your minimum standard for this relationship to be desirable for you. So that's the sunk cost fallacy. The second is conflict. A lot of people do not like conflict, and they believe that a breakup would lead to conflict or some other fallout. It might be that there are financial consequences of ending a relationship or an impact on shared children, for example. And I'm not saying that those things don't matter. What this hypnosis session does is helps to give clarity of factoring in every single variable, the length of the relationship, the dynamics of the individual, the past, the possible future, and any possible fallout is baked into 3 different scenarios. Keeping the relationship exactly as it is, no improvements, and imagining what that would lead to. Having a relationship that can be mended, can be improved to the level that you're actually happy with. And then the third element of clarity in this hypnosis session is exploring a relationship where you end the relationship and you move forward on your own. Now, this is not about encouraging you to end a relationship. It's about aiming to give you a sense of clarity based on your subjective evaluation of those 3 different futures. And if you believe it's the right thing to do, then to feel like it's unlocking a certain level of courage so that you can do the difficult thing if you believe it's the right thing to do. So if you can resonate with this, you might get some value. Now, the original client was in a long relationship. They used to travel a lot. They had, let's say, got to a point where the original things that attracted them to the relationship really just weren't there anymore. And they wanted to consider either getting that relationship back to where it would be valuable or imagining a future where they had their own cottage and were doing their own things on their own time. It's unlikely that's going to be your specific experience. So when you hear anything that doesn't quite fit your reality, ignore those suggestions and replace it with whatever is relevant for you, so that even though this session that was created for someone else can still be valuable and useful for you. For now, though, find a quiet, comfortable place where you're not going to be distracted or disturbed. Relax and enjoy the session. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in that feeling of tranquility, serenity, relaxation. And as you exhale, allow yourself to release any frustrations, any anger, any tension. Just give permission to release. And feel like it's leaving your body on that outward breath. A wise man once said that holding on to anger or resentment is like drinking poison and secretly hoping that the other person gets sick. And I want you to get a feeling that any anger, any resentment, any frustrations are not for you to hold on to. And when you release them, you empower yourself to think cleanly, clearly, to assess what is now necessary for you to continue life as it is. As you breathe in, imagine breathing in a wonderful feeling of clarity, not motivation, but clarity. Because when you see things for what they actually are, decisions become easier. I want you to think of the last time that you rolled a pair of dice. There was different combinations. Lots of different numbers were possible. 1 to 6 on each die. And yet, there was nothing you needed to do. You could simply observe what happened. And in the same way that there is possibilities and probabilities on the roll of a dice, I want you to get a sense that there are possibilities and probabilities in a relationship. And as you breathe in and breathe out, I want you to connect to the feeling you had when things were well, when there were that feeling of connection and love and respect and consideration. Not through the lens of nostalgia, no need to reminisce, but to prove to yourself that there was a time where this relationship didn't just meet your needs, it exceeded them. And therefore, for a period of time, this relationship worked for you and worked for your partner. And I want you to get a sense that sometimes things change subtly. In the same way that it's difficult to see a tree grow if you see that tree every day. But if you only see the tree once or twice a year, you notice the changes. I want you to become aware of that law of familiarity. That when you see someone every day, subtle shifts happen gradually over time. In the same way that if you put a frog in a saucepan in cold water and slowly heat the temperature, The frog doesn't know the temperature's changing. It doesn't attempt to leave the water even when it's boiling, even if it's the end of that frog. And that's the danger of slow, incremental, subtle shifts that make something gradually worse. So as you breathe in and breathe out, I want you to imagine condensing 25 years into what feels like 25 memories. What's the most intense or profound memory in that first year that you were together? What emotions come up when you think of that memory? And then think of 2 or 3 years later. Maybe it was adventure and travel, new experiences and connection. And then think of another 2 or 3 years. So 5 or 6 years after you first met. And what memory comes up then? And as you think in those 3-year increments, you get to see a pattern forming. And for some, that would get stronger, more connection. But for others, it might feel like it's getting colder or more distant. Less empathy, less interactions. And then imagine the last 3 or 4 years. And ask yourself the question that if the last 3 or 4 years were the first 3 or 4 years, would it have even lasted 3 or 4 years? As you breathe in and breathe out, I want you to imagine what it would feel like to imagine a cinema with 3 screens. How unusual would that be? A cinema with 3 different screens. And maybe they curve around you. Or maybe the cinema's just very big and they are side by side by side. As we explore 3 different futures, I want you to imagine on the screen all the way on the left. This is a future where nothing changes. And some people believe that anything you don't change, you choose. That's why things continuing become a choice. And I want you to imagine the next 5 or 10 years, if things remain on the same trajectory. What level of connection is there? How much laughter, conversations? How much interest or value? I want you to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. No elaborations, no embellishments. See it for what your unconscious believes it would be. 5 or 10 more years of the trajectory you're currently on. But imagine seeing it like you're seeing a movie on a screen. You're not in your own body, you're just witnessing. Because sometimes, in the same way that when you see a friend or a family member making choices in their life, it seems obvious what to do. But it's harder when you're living it. So as you imagine seeing yourself like an actor on a screen, what would you be shouting at the screen hoping that character does? Just allow that movie to continue to the natural end of that movie, even if it's beyond 10 years. What is the end of that story? And then imagine looking at the middle screen. And I want you to imagine, just like the phoenix from the flames, I want you to imagine that in the middle screen, something happens to reignite whatever you need in the relationship to want to remain in that relationship. And it doesn't have to be passion and excitement or love and intimacy. I want you to see in that middle screen, your needs are being met. Not wishes, not fantasies, not likes and wants, but what you absolutely need in that relationship for you to want to stay. And maybe you're seeing smiles, interactions, thoughtfulness, consideration. Maybe you're seeing effort being made, questions being asked. Maybe you're seeing certain things that you've been hoping for, but in this middle screen, they're actually happening. And as you observe, notice what you feel. And if it feels like that's the kind of relationship you would want, then the middle screen is doing what the middle screen is meant to do. But if you're still not satisfied with what's happening in that middle screen, change it so you absolutely are. Because this middle screen now becomes a criteria. And if this criteria can be met, then it makes sense to stay in this relationship. But you can inverse that too. And make a commitment to yourself that if this criteria can't be met, then you don't want it. Which brings us on to that screen on the right. And I want you to see the beginning of this movie. See yourself bringing the relationship to an end. Maybe that's in a conversation. Maybe bags are already packed. Maybe it's through a long handwritten letter. And maybe that conversation is in the place where you live, or perhaps while traveling. But I want you to see that you instigate the end. Perhaps you're doing what someone else is afraid to do, what someone else has been leading you towards all this time. This is the version of you that accepts the reality for what it is and acts accordingly. No need to figure out intentions, motivations. No need to hold on to a dream or a hope that things will change. This screen starts with you making a decision that if it can't be what you need it to be, then you don't want it. And then see what happens after. You might consider it a new chapter, a new phase. But I want you to see the facial expressions of you with a new level of enthusiasm, excitement. You're not daunted or sad by this future. You're invigorated by it. Imagine the kind of house you'd be living in. Maybe a white cottage or maybe it has that kind of Scandi features. Imagine the interior and the exterior, having it exactly as you'd want it to be. Yours. And I want you to imagine the kind of furniture, the kind of location in the world. And I want you to imagine life beyond just that home. New friendships, hobbies, a social life, interactions, the kind of travel you would do. See it all. And as you think about that future, don't just see it for the next few weeks or months, see it for 5 to 10 years. And then imagine being in that large cinema in that comfy chair, and imagine having the clarity to see all movies side by side. Screen 1 is the status quo. And if you're not changing, you're choosing. You get what you tolerate, not what you deserve. And screen 1 just shows you tolerating, but not changing. And screen 2, this is what mending the relationship would be like. And maybe there's a part of you that really wants this to be true. But I want you to connect with an idea that if you can't mend it, if your needs can't be met, then no anger, no resentment, no blame, no shame, no frustration, just pragmatic reality check. It is what it is, and see yourself acting accordingly. And that would be screen 3. Living life on your terms, thinking of your needs. And I want you to get a sense of clarity. That perhaps there is only one of these screens that you're not willing to accept. But by seeing it for what it is, that now becomes a line in the sand. If it remains that way, you don't want it. And maybe screen 2 is what would need to happen. But that's also a line in the sand. That if it can't get to that level, you don't want it. It doesn't matter how delicious your favorite food is. If someone does something to that food to make you not want it anymore, even if you're hungry, you won't eat it. I want you to get a sense that there is no need to run away from anything. You are now running toward either a relationship that meets your needs or a life no longer dependent on that relationship. But either way, see yourself happier because you're no longer willing to tolerate a life where your needs aren't met. There is no need to accept emotional breadcrumbs. You have the courage to live life on your terms. As you leave that cinema, you leave with a sense of absolute clarity, knowing what it would take to leave to stay, and what life would be like beyond. No regret, no resentment, because when you try, even if it doesn't get to what you want it to be, you know you did everything you could, and that's enough to move forward without needing to run away. It's time to return to the present with that clarity and with the courage to have whatever conversations and interactions are necessary to allow you to make decisions based on reality, not based on hope or wishful thinking. So as you start to float back to the here and the now, take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Just wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes. Connect and calibrate into the here and the now. As I now count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. Starting to count. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of The Hypnotist. If you've enjoyed this episode or got some value from it, please give it a 5-star rating and review. And maybe you know someone that would also benefit from this particular episode, in which case share the episode with them so they can also get the benefit too. And if you would like to listen to this episode where it's just the hypnosis, so no intro, no outro, no explanation, just the hypnosis and completely ad-free, there will be a link in the description where you can subscribe at a very low cost and only get access to the hypnosis. So if that's of interest, please check that out. Thank you again for being a regular listener of The Hypnotist, and I'll see you again soon for more.